Welcome to Suddenly Different, where we explore stories and strategies for life when it doesn't go to plan. I'm Leigh-Anne Charland, inviting you to join me on this journey. There are moments in life when everything we thought we were goes quiet. Not metaphorically, literally. Today's guest knows the silence intimately. Nico Lim, also known as Flash Poetry, is a poet, freestyle artist, TEDx Melbourne performer, and Velociraptor. But before the stages, before the flow state, before the crowds leaning in, there was illness. There was a rare infection, a month without a voice, and a life that became suddenly different. What emerged from that silence wasn't just poetry. It was a new way of listening, a new relationship with words, and a deep trust in improvisation and the intelligence of the moment. Nico's work doesn't perform at people, it performs with them. It turns audiences into collectives. It invites meaning rather than explaining it. This conversation isn't about success or technique. It's about what happens when the body interrupts the plan and something truer steps forward. Nico, welcome to Suddenly Different.
Thank you, Leigh-Anne. I'm glad to be here.
It's just you've had so many travels, like such an interesting life in what I would say are your short number of years. When we spoke in preparation for this interview, the story that you told me, which I would love you to tell our audience, is about when did that silence come? Where were you when that happened in South America? And what did it feel like being so far away from home and in such a confusing and unhealthy situation?
Yeah, let's begin with the calamity. As all, as a good story must. I was in South America. I spent 2 years there, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I was living in a rural community in Colombia, teaching English and music. It was very much a jungle environment. It was hard to believe. Even I find it hard to believe now. A lot of those memories seem so dreamlike because it's so far removed from what happens here in Australia. And yeah, I was having the time of my life and really enjoying it, learning Spanish and being in this community. There's a number of reasons I think that I can point to as to how this illness came about. But I got sick one day, really sick, and it felt like a bacterial thing from drinking the water. And yeah, I found myself kind of just absolutely debilitated, lying in the bed of the basement of this jungle hut. And, the conditions in this place, looking back on it now, my 30-year-old self I'm slapping myself a little bit, thinking, there was mold, there was dust everywhere. I remember this morning I woke up in that bed and there was an iguana, like a giant iguana, just sitting right there on like next to me. And it was very much, let's say, open air. And when I think about memories of periods, that were 5 years ago, or that were memories that had really quite traumatic and painful and heightened experiences, there's just these moments you remember and these little pieces and fragments and things that people say. I definitely remember rolling around in that bed, throwing up, being so incredibly sick and just feeling something happening in my throat. And at that time, I just thought it was going to be something short-lived. But yeah, I remember, when you're really sick and deeply sick with something that your body is not used to, I imagine most people do this, but I was making all sorts of deals with the devil, with God, any bargaining that I could with any divine entities. And yeah, I eventually got out of that state, but my throat kind of stayed the same. And that begun sort of a very long journey to realizing that something had happened in my body that had that had kind of removed my ability to use my voice, and that progressively got worse. And so, yeah, this next period of my life after that event was suddenly different.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we do, like, I'm sure that you had big plans in, like you had dreams of what you were going to do with your voice because you were in
Yeah.
music and
Yeah, definitely. I was singing at that time and I was teaching, and so there's a lot of vocal use. And the voice is there's a special kind of alienation and loneliness that comes that I think people only who have lost their voice can understand. And everyone has their own niche suffering, and that they can relate to others who have felt that. People with chronic pain, or people with there's many ailments in this beautiful world, but that is what I never expected, and it was an incredibly disorienting time because I just never realized what it would be like to be without a voice and what that meant for me as a self, as an identity. I love talking, I love words, my whole life singing, and so that was it was a change.
so once you recovered from the infection or an ailment seems far too small in poundage to
Mm.
describe what you had, but once you were into your new normal, what did that silence do to your future plans? What did that, or the effect on your voice? What did that do? Did you, like many of us, did you try to soldier on and push yourself through the boundaries of the illness, of the effect?
Yeah, that lasted a couple of days of trying to, positively think my way out of it, and go back to class. And no, it became pretty apparent to me almost immediately that something had gone wrong, and that there was some kind of infection. Later, I found out after many specialists that it was some kind of lung infection from a rare bacteria that no one had really heard of, that I was talking to in Australia and doctors in Australia. But yeah, after a few days of realizing I couldn't really speak, I had laryngitis, tonsillitis. I was like, okay, that'll pass. That passed. And then it just was a lack of an incredible dryness in my throat. I didn't have the voice to speak. There was something going wrong between my breath and the vocal cords. And yeah, I just very quickly shifted from my wild wanderlust, let's sleep on the floor of jungle huts, to my very let's first world, let's spend as much money as I can and do everything I can to heal. And it's a recurring lesson that and I'm sure everyone learns in life, is that you really just have your health. And when your health gets taken away, you know, everything, basically everything, that is kind of the baseline for everything. And yeah, I learned that in a baptism of fire. Certainly it hit me, and it was just a series of me talking to my parents, talking to doctors back home, going to see specialists in Colombia. I booked myself into a hotel and just was trying to do everything. I was trying to just sanitize and clean and just be as healthy and give my body the chance to heal. All the plans that I had, the job that I was doing, everything just kind of shifted, and it was more about, am I going to need to fly home immediately, or am I going to stick this out and try and find a way through? And I didn't want to come home.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
when you've got a big trip planned and you've got objectives and yeah, you don't want to give up. And so when looking at that, like, I know with my condition, like,
Yeah.
this week has been a really bad week for me, and I probably have almost 36 hours straight this week because I've overdone it and the heat knocks me around. But I went through a grieving stage in the first 12 months of my illness. And I wonder whether you were in that grieving stage at that point of what was not getting better straight away, because we do expect instant fixes to our
Yeah.
illness.
Yeah.
Did you go into any grief while you were in South America, or is that more a later thing?
Yeah, thanks. I feel like I didn't grieve because I wasn't ready to. I was so I the idea of not being able to use my voice again was just, yeah, it was definitely one of the scariest things I've ever felt. And a part of me, I've always kind of tried to have the attitude to life of whatever happens, you can try and you got to just roll with it and make the most of it. Life throws, incredibly seemingly unnecessary and nefarious things at people from, every single day. And people just get on with it, and they find a way to make that part of what makes their life meaningful. And that's just this incredible power that human beings have. We can really, yeah, there's almost nothing that we can't overcome. And I kind of said to myself, well, I was putting so much thought into healing. And I know one of my friends said to me, who's suffered from chronic pain, he said, if you're obsessed with healing, it's not the best time. It's not the best time for your body to actually heal. Like, one thing you might have to do is come to terms with the fact that if you don't heal, you'll be okay. And life will go on, and you can still have a happy life even if this never gets better. And so there was an element of trying to accept it, and that's what led me to continue. I was writing lyrics at the time, but that form shifted into writing poetry, and writing specifically for it to be read on the page, not even spoken out. And yeah, I'd never really written poetry like that before, and so that was definitely a refuge for me during that time.
That's amazing. I love that humans, we do find another way to express ourselves, especially if like it's our passion. So the fact that you started writing poetry and, it wasn't about the voice, it was about the words, it was about the meaning that people made from your poetry.
Hmm.
That is amazing. And do you still do a lot of written poetry as well as um, your live poetry?
I do write, but for fun generally. Like, the stuff I really work on is lyrics for my songs now that I
Yeah.
have my voice back and I'm making music and releasing stuff online. And yeah, so it's not so I haven't really shared poems in a while, but yeah, I write a lot just because, I guess I'm a writer.
Yeah. Well, that's who you are. I was fascinated with your COVID story. Yes, so tell the audience about what happens when you're stuck in a remote location during a pandemic.
Well, this is one of those stories that has so many parts and is just so incredibly unbelievable, but I'll keep it as brief as possible. And I was in a different part of South America at this point. My voice had started to get better, and I could talk again. After a while, I did get my voice back, and I saw many specialists and did changed everything. My diet, everything, medication. I was doing lots of things. Still to this day, I continue to eat according to how my voice is, and eat according to the diet that is the best to give my body the ability to have the most powerful voice it can. And yeah, I was in South America, in Peru at this point, and get a call from one of my friend's mums on a satellite phone. We're in the mountains, and she says, "Hey, there's a pandemic happening in the world." We're in the Andes mountain, living in an indigenous community, so far away from anyone. And she says, "I think you guys have to come home." And me and my friend who had come and visited me, we were kind of just laughing it off, saying, Australians, they're always panicking. And then everyone else on the farm started getting calls from their parents saying, "Hey, this is serious. We got to come home." And so that began a couple of weeks long extraction from this remote community in Peru, which I guess culminated. I mean, there were so many things that happened along the way that was just truly unbelievable. We were in an indigenous community where they were very, very concerned about the presence of foreigners, because at that point they thought that the virus was coming from travelers, and there was definitely that was the story that was being perpetuated in the community. And I was there with a bunch of foreigners and we were trying to figure out our way out. And it was seriously difficult to get out of there. We had to pull an incredible amount of strings, and it took probably about 3 weeks to get us back to Lima. And when I got there, I remember we were escorted by military the whole time. The whole thing was just an incredibly surreal and apocalyptic scene. And when we got to Peru and we got to Lima finally, this guy came up to me and my friend Kyle, and he said, "Are you Nico and Kyle?" And we are like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You two were the hardest Australians to get out of Peru. Like, you guys were a nightmare to get out." And we were just like, well, thanks for getting us. And, I remember this moment just before I left the farm where we were on. My Peruvian friend who owned the farm, he arrived. He was there, and the embassy's car came, and it was actually the Canadian embassy that picked us up. The Australian embassy got blocked on the road by the Indigenous police multiple times, and the Canadian car finally came, and we said, "Hey, like, we're Australian. Like, can we come?" And they said, "This is the Canadian car." And we said, like, "Please, we're Australian." And they said, "All right, get it." And so as we're leaving, I turned to my friend Bill Seth, and I remember, it all happened so quickly. And suddenly I thought I was going to be there for the next year with him, and he thought he was going to be with me through the pandemic, and we were good friends. And now everyone was leaving him, and I was the last one to go. And he said to me, and this was an incredibly emotional moment. And he just said, "You can go, but just remember, if this was me stuck in your country, nobody would come and get me." And that's so true. And so, yeah, I have a lot of gratitude, and it definitely changed my perspective on, what we have here in Australia, and even how much our government actually does care about us compared to places where they don't have the resources to even begin to care and begin to evacuate people. And so, yeah, it was a wild story of misadventure and privilege.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you been able to return to South America since that time, or is that a part of your life that chapter is closed?
A part of my heart is still there, definitely, because I had a great life there. I was there for 2 years, and I actually had no plans to come home. But no, I got back to Australia, and this whole music thing just slowly showed itself. And now I've got this new thing going here. I've got a partner, and yeah, I think that's my Jungle Boy days behind me.
Isn't it interesting how our lives, they're like a book, right? The chapters, they're so different. Like it's not, there can be life-changing events like your illness, which you fought through to stay there. Then the pandemic, which forced you to come back home, and you've got parts of the illness that are still affecting you. And as you said, you had to become, I can't remember the word, accepting
Right.
of the illness, so that you weren't fighting against it.
Yeah.
You were in union together, working through it.
Definitely, yeah. It's an illness, I'm sure, as you know, it's more of a companion than anything. It's something that eventually you have to kind of come to terms with and make peace with. And I think people with mental health conditions experience this. It's almost like you've got this passenger.
Yes, and I think, especially with mental illness, it's constantly on your mind. It's constantly you have no freedom from the thinking.
Yeah, definitely.
When that's happening. Whereas sometimes with a more physical illness, you can have restful moments that are you can almost forget that you're unwell.
Yeah, how quickly we forget.
Yes. So it is about, as you said before, about paying attention to what your body needs for you to be able to have your voice, to be able to live the life that you've created for yourself back here.
Yeah, and I'm so blessed to have found myself where I am now. Yeah, it's every hard experience, every calamity, every traumatic event is indeed a calamity or a traumatic event. But if you eventually arrive at a place where you are content, at some point, no matter where it is in the future, that event now can be seen through a different light, and it can be seen as a necessary stepping stone to this contentness that you have. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing for me to keep in mind as I go on this path, which is, a bit of a roller coaster, doing the art thing full time and just kind of, dispensing with all adult concerns and throwing myself into the world of creativity and passion and spirit. And it's very much a trusting that, you know, everything happens for a reason, even if it doesn't, and just going along with it.
It's a sliding door moment, isn't it? Right? You don't know what life would have been like had you never had that infection, or had COVID never happened. You don't know. And you'll
Mm,
never be able to go, well, this would have happened
right,
or
right.
that would have happened. It's like, no, it's the path went this way, and
Yeah.
that's that.
Yeah. It's, I love the line Milan Kundera says in his book, we walk through the present with a blindfold on, and we only realize the true meaning of things when we are far past the actual events that we live.
Yeah. It's a shame that we don't live in the present. Do you find that you live more in the present now, especially with your art? I mean, you would have to be in your present to do that.
Yeah. The present, the biggest scam of the 21st century. I think everyone is thinking that they're not present as much as they should be. I think we've all got like that specter of guilt of, oh, I'm not as there as I should be, or this is not, there's something slightly, I'm somewhere else just a little bit. And yeah, I find, I think I experience that as much as anyone in life. I go about my daily life, and sometimes things just blur together, and I find myself lost in unconscious thoughts that I didn't intend to have, and all the little trivialities that life so loves to fill our heads with. But yeah, definitely I think I'm getting better as I get older. That was one thing that I felt as I turned 30. It was feeling like my life is literally, slipping through my fingers, and I don't really have that much time to mess around with things that aren't worth messing around with. And yeah, that's been really liberating because, in your 20s, you got all the freedom in the world, but you don't have the presence of mind to enjoy it.
Yeah. But it's interesting what you studied at school. So you did the physics and maths and sociology and philosophy sort of area, which I actually probably could see that playing out in your art. But what pulled you away from that more certainty science based towards the more ambiguous philosophy based presence
Mm.
based?
Yeah, well, my dad's an engineer, and I come from a family where people were pretty good at maths. I'm half Chinese, half Indian, and so it's very much it's a beaten path for a lot of my family. And I think there are two different ways of seeing the world, and I think I realized at some point, in my first year of university, after doing physics for a little while, I realized that, and this maybe has something to do with the stage of life you're in when you're in university, which is, you want to go and meet people and have adventures and go to bars and talk to people. And yeah, I think I had this realization that, I could learn as much as I wanted about math, but no one would really understand what I was learning. And I couldn't really communicate what I was learning to anyone other than a mathematician. But to study the humanities and to study poetry and writing and sociology, philosophy, anthropology, this is the kind of knowledge that you can bring home to the dinner table, and you can meet someone on the street, and you can muse about the world. There's a certain kind of imagination that comes with those. And life for me is experienced, well, it's an emotional experience primarily. So even if that is just, my perception or my projection and my own judgment that I make about reality as it is objectively, which I'm sure the pure mathematicians among us would say that that is what life is. But for me, I experience it on an emotional and a visceral level, and poetry speaks to that. And with every book I read and with every poem I write, I find my experience of life is enriched and enlarged, and that for me is that's the path that I want to walk.
It's a gift. It's a gift to
Mm,
be comfortable. So, because I think a lot of us don't necessarily feel comfortable being so deep. I know I'm very deep, but a lot of people like to live on that surface, like to live in the cognitive, like to live in the structure.
mm,
Whereas being able to be in a flow state, be able to follow your own creativity, to accept your own rhythm and
mm.
pace.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I count myself and yourself as well incredibly lucky to be able to be in a vocation where we get to do that and we get to have an impact on the world by, being in our feelings and being deep and being emotionally attuned. Because yeah, the world needs all different kinds of people, and it's amazing that there are people out there, doing these jobs that are so much more structured and in many ways based in a world of arithmetic and based in a world of fact. And for me, that is not what lights me up. And so yeah, it's a beautiful thing, especially for me getting to do this poetry path. And I've got 3 gigs on this weekend, and at each of them the degree to which I succeed at the gigs depends on how much I can connect with the audience in front of me, which depends on how much I can really be attuned to myself and feel connected to myself and feel comfortable and feel aligned. And so yeah, it's a beautiful vocation. Yeah, I take it very seriously because I know it's an incredible privilege.
And it has a great impact. I saw you at TEDx Melbourne, and I was transfixed. I'd never seen somebody do a performance like yours. And when I listened, especially to your freestyle, when you were bringing in everything that had happened before, up until your performance, you brought in everybody, you brought in everything, you brought in the deep, unspoken elements that were covered. It was so enormously. It was the gift. Like, everybody's performance was wonderful, but yours was so new for me and such a gift. And I wonder whether you have that experience when you go into, like, one of your gigs where you've had to align yourself and center yourself and be ready to be connected with everybody in the room and let go.
Yeah, letting go is definitely it's a fine line between it's a balancing act between letting go and holding on real tight because you don't want to, there's it's yeah, it's a incredibly cathartic but at the same time stressful thing to do. There's these two things that are fighting each other and that are weaving together. And yeah, I know definitely it's for me there is a surrender that has to happen, but it's not so much a complete surrender because I've still got to make 1,000 decisions a minute on
Yeah.
what I'm saying and what does it mean to me and the story I'm telling and how it all weaves into the event and what I've said before. And so, yeah, it's just it's a beautiful thing that the audience in the room really helps me with because I can feel the attention of people and I can feel this special transmission occurring when it's good, definitely. And that just puts me in a state of presence. It's hard to think about your laundry and your shopping list when you've got you know, even two people, if they're watching you, you know, like I've done when I go busking and stuff, I play farmers markets and things. Even if it's just one kid just standing there watching, if I can just zone in on that one person, you know, I will rap to no one. And one is you know, that's a bonus. And so just having that connection with someone, obviously when there's like 500 people there, like TEDx, it's even better. It's a whole lot of presence. And yeah, it's an amazing thing because I kind of don't even have to worry so much about surrendering or holding on or what am I going to say. It's just it comes in the moment, and yeah, I just have to trust and also be okay with making mistakes and just keep, you know, stumbling and continuing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the human experience, isn't it, to make
Yeah.
mistakes? And yeah, I wonder what happens internally before you begin. So do you have a preparation process that you?
Yeah, I think it's different with every gig. Recently, you know, ever since I've been doing a lot of gigs last year, and I've just been calming down a lot. I just feel a little more and more relaxed every time, which is just I'm so thankful for that because yeah, for a while there was just so much nerves, sweating, you know, all the fluids in my body suddenly evacuating, you know, in a disorderly fashion. And now I just feel so much excitement, and I feel just this potential of never know what it's going to be, and I never know what's going to come out. But the more I do this, the more connected I feel with the language and with my craft and with my beliefs and my philosophies. And yeah, it's just it's pure play, really. Like it really is a lot of fun, and so yeah, I'm super lucky, which is probably a good time for me. I don't know if you want to throw in a freestyle, but I would be happy to demonstrate something.
That would be absolutely fantastic if you could do that.
I would love to. Do you have any say words or suggestions? You know, I'm happy to weave in things that we've talked about. This has been such a beautiful conversation. But if there's anything that you feel like you might want me to try and speak to, you're welcome.
Maybe if we can bring in the suddenly different idea
Mm,
and the companionship of your health rather than and being comfortable with your health.
right on. All right. Well, this has been a this has been an amazing conversation. I kind of feel like I've died and gone to heaven, and now God is replaying my life right here in the present. And honestly, while I am talking, I am dreaming. I'm standing right here, just a couple of human beings. I'm feeling that I'm here, and you know I've got no plan. Standing on this land, suddenly different with Leigh-Anne, and we're thinking, well, we could look to the past, and we could say to ourselves, well, will any of it last? And I'm feeling like every day I am just rambling. My health and this condition, it is like a companion, you carry it, a dark passenger, and I feel like sometimes, well, I'm just a child, I'm an amateur, I wield these words, and I'm wielding this language, I feel like I am here, I've got this concrete bandage wrapped around me, and it's wrapped around you too, and everybody is just talking, but who knew that the modern age would cast this spell on us like it's voodoo? But we just keep on going, we just keep on trying, we are living, we are imagining, and we are simply just fathoming. We are unraveling, but really human beings always are managing and adapting. We're pushing on through. The adversity never really can stop us. And so we go through. Yes, you know, we keep our focus. We know what it is and we know what it isn't. And we are standing right here and we're sick of the isn'ts. We want to walk and feel that we can be here in the present. Feel what it is to simply find attention in the moment, to find it here in my vision. But sometimes, well, things are sudden and they can change. Your body steps up with a different way to go, a different path. And so you say, I could lose control. I could maybe just be known and I could sing my song. But the great unknown is just telling me that things could be fine. And so I look the sky in the eye and I say, I don't mind. Life is a sublime, divine choice. And I am here today and you know that I enjoy, but I'm trying to be here. I'm trying to be more feeling. I'm trying to go on this journey of heal. And every human being is just walking walking on their path, climbing up the ladder, whether you're a poet or a rapper or a writer, a librarian, pescatarian, whatever it may be. Yes, you know that it's nefarious and it is beauty, it is tragedy and calamity. Reality is telling me everything is just your family, waiting to be seen, waiting to be embraced, and I'm here to simply just be. And so we are just walking, we're feeling, we're changing. The days will they come, and I am just rearranging my according to what I can feel is true, according to what I can feel I can do with the life that I've had, that I've been given. I'm looking back and forth at strangers of superstitions that keep telling me, well, things can just be different. Things could be better and things could be worse. And so as a freestyle poet, I just connect to myself. And through that, I put out the verse and I place it on the table. I say that it is here. We are the devil and the angel upon the shoulder of the gods. And we just say that it is just love, it is lust, and it is getting hot in Australia, and it's a hot, hot summer. And so I've got to say, well, you know, it's not a bummer sometimes when you find yourself just wondering, praying to the gods, why has this happened? And I am just fumbling, but I don't know where it leads. No one knows. That's what it means to be free. And so I'm here with my vision. And so I'm here. Yes, I'm going upon a mission. Flash poetry, doing this on Suddenly Different. A freestyle rhyme with Leigh-Anne. I might just say, well, thank you for these questions. And let's keep it going today because, you know, we've got presence. It is pouring out of us, pouring like a tsunami, and I am here just to say, start the party and then we'll relax and we can do both. The balance, in fact, is there, and I rap and I sing, and the poetry, it comes out my mouth, and I know that everything is just waiting, and I am knowing that I am taking my time and the steps as I walk up the mountain, get to the top, and I say, I'll make my announcement on this beautiful day. I am here. The future is a beautiful vision. And I am here with Suddenly Different. Thank you.
Wow, that was amazing.
Well, yeah, went for it there. Didn't expect that.
That was so fantastic. That is, yeah, wow. Thank you so much. Our listeners will absolutely, they are so fortunate and just watching you. Now I want to understand more about the craft of poetry and the craft of rapping, and because watching you and feeling the change of pace, it was such a delightful experience. So if a person thinks, like probably most people think, I'm not a poet, and self-exclude themselves, what is poetry at its core?
For me, I feel poetry is life distilled into something essential. It's kind of the act of taking the experience and trying valiantly, but albeit in a futile way most of the time, to trap it and capture it and you know, put it into something that can be shared and delivered. And even in that futile attempt, there is so much connection and so many bridges that can be built between our private experiences of life. And yeah, for me, poetry is just, you know, language that reaches out and grabs you.
Yeah, wow. I'm having like a visceral response to your performance. It was just like, I can't wait to listen to the recording. I really can't wait
Yeah.
because I'm like gobsmacked. And I think this is how I felt after your TEDx. I just was, I actually didn't want anyone else to come on stage because I wanted space to be able to appreciate their artwork, and it's different to traditional songs and singing, as in like Daryl Braithwaite and Horses, right? Like you can really, I enjoy singing along, but it's a different feeling. I don't think I've ever wanted there to be a big pause after somebody else has sung a song. But with you, I just want to just really look forward to being able to reflect and relive that experience. And I think, is poetry like, what would you recommend for somebody to just play? Is it just do some writing, just reflect on their day? What would you, if somebody wanted to have a go?
Yeah. At poetry or freestyling? Which one do you?
So so it's not poetry expressed in a certain way. Freestyling, they're both different.
I would say they're very different experiences in the sense that poetry is such an insular and inward journey. It's very much when I was writing poetry, well, I didn't have my voice and I was alone just with my journal and just writing and writing. And there's something, it's somewhat antisocial about it. And that's where the depth comes from. And I think for me, poetry represents the depth and the real kind of fervent dedication to truth and to beauty. And freestyling, is poetry in the sense of what is alive, channeling. It's a cathartic experience that can sometimes, sometimes it's not so poetic. Sometimes it's whatever it needs to be in the moment. And so I think both are incredibly cathartic and healing and just beautiful practices to have. I teach freestyle rap workshops, and yeah, time and time again, the experiences people have in those workshops are astounding. It's pretty incredible. And so, well, I'll say as for poetry, it's just writing whatever it is that you're feeling and taking your time, going one by one, word by word, because that's what poetry is for me. Is it's language that is pregnant with so much meaning. And you can read a poem too quickly, but you can't read one too slowly. And I think there's an element of care and reverence that comes with writing poetry that yeah, I've always been just dumbfounded how people exclude themselves from the creative realm, given the arts are romanticized and lionized for their being the creative pursuits. But there's just so many vocations and elements of life that demand so much creativity that really, inherently, I truly believe, beyond any platitude or feel good statement, that we are all deeply creative. You think about, John O'Donohue says, when you dream at night, you create this incredible tapestry of image and story. Everyone does it just subconsciously. Like, we all have this incredible power of imagination in our minds. And often, it's the voice in your head that says that's stupid, or that doesn't sound good, or you're not this person. And for me, that's where freestyle rap comes in, because freestyle rap is the practice in the way I teach it and the way I practice it. It's the practice of perpetual radical non-self judgment.
Perpetual radical non-self-judgment. That, I reckon, the quotes that, people are known for? Perpetual radical non-self-judgment. I think you should patent that. But it is, look, I can see, I've worked in corporate for over 40 years, and I could imagine corporates using it for leadership workshops in trying to break through that imposter syndrome and break through the inhibitions and it could definitely be a lot of fun
Mm.
finding that freedom, because we are so tight.
Yeah, we are. It's true. I mean, that's what growing up is all about, in our
Yeah.
society is getting. Yeah.
Somebody said we had to tighten up or
Yeah.
toughen up or something. And it's like, well, we do that. Well, actually, what we need to do is go with the flow. And
Yeah.
when we're with that flow, we can really be, right? We started our conversation today about happiness and contentment. And I think that, being able to express the way that I feel like you've given me permission.
Mm.
Right. And I hope our audience feels that way, that, go and be creative. do something that's on the don't do list.
Definitely. And, you know, I love this, and I feel like I'm so, so happy to be part of the freestyle revolution in particular, because it's so incredibly accessible. Like, after my workshops, I send people, and, you know, your listeners are more than welcome if they want to message me on Instagram, or they can get it from my website. I can share like a playlist of instrumentals that are not so, you know, it's not so hip hop. It's just like really nice music that you can use. And the next time you're in your car or you're at home with a friend or just alone, just give it a go, you know, put on some music and just talk, but talk with a little bit of a rhythm. Make sure you're feeling the music. Don't worry about rhyming. You can rhyme if you want, but just get used to, you know, letting it come out as a flow. It's just like conversation, you know. I don't know what I'm going to say in this sentence. The end point of the sentence is completely unknown to me, and yet I'm trusting that I'm going to be able to get there. And then yet when you ask people to freestyle or you know, to do something poetic, they freeze up. And so it is really bridging those two and realizing that we're improvising all the time, and that music, rhythm is just deeply a part of humans, and putting those two things together. I've learned, to my pleasant surprise, that it's not as hard as it looks.
Well, you are an absolute, you're a genius. You are an absolute genius. And I am so blessed to have been sitting at TEDx and seeing you live. And I'm so grateful for you being on our podcast today. So listeners, what I love about this conversation, is that it reminds us of something essential, that when life removes a voice, it doesn't remove meaning. Sometimes it deepens it. Nico's story isn't about becoming extraordinary. It's about becoming available to silence, available to uncertainty, available to the moment that asks us to respond rather than perform. If you're listening and your life has shifted in ways you didn't choose, if your body has changed the rules, if certainty has dissolved, let this be your reminder. There are many ways to speak. Nico, thank you for bringing your presence, your words, and your listening into this space. And to everyone listening, may you trust what's trying to emerge from you, even if it doesn't sound like what you planned. Thank you, Nico.
Thanks so much, Leigh-Anne.
This has been Suddenly Different. I'm Leigh-Anne Charland, and I'm so grateful you shared your time with me. If you felt a spark, a tear, or a moment of recognition, I hope you'll pass that gift along by sharing this show. Take a deep breath, trust your path, and I'll meet you back here soon.